It's the new year. It's the new conference season as UCLA heads into Big Ten play. But how are they looking when it comes to NCAA tournament seeding and potential brackets in 2025?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free where we get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. It's your team every day. Welcome to 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the support. And I hope you guys had a safe and happy New Year's Eve, New Year's Day celebrations. Where we get started today is UCLA and their march towards March Madness, right? Last year, Mick Cronin missed it. It's a rare occurrence when Mick Cronin's been a head coach. UCLA is now trying to make amends for last year with what Mick Cronin did in the portal, getting newcomers on scholarship or NIL funds, turning that into a completely revamped roster. UCLA 11-2, a top 15 team, well on their way. They practically have solidified an NCAA tournament spot. All right. Yes. Now, if they lose 20 games in a row, no, they are not going to make it to an NCAA tournament. But UCLA is not going to lose 20 games in a row. So let's throw that out the window. The Bruins, with what they've done, yes, a very light non-conference schedule in November. Very, very, very light. And the one marquee game, the Bruins lost it. I was looking at Joe Lunardi's bracketology that he dropped just the night before New Year's Day, has UCLA as a 4 seed. All right. You look at KenPom, they got UCLA at 15, right around where they're ranked in the AP poll and what they've got analytically. So all that matches up with what the eye test is looking like with UCLA. So does that mean they're disrespected? I think UCLA is a true contender this year. There are some things they have to shore up, maybe get a little healthier the post, depending on the William Kyle assessment after his surgery earlier in the week, his successful surgery. UCLA needs more of an interior presence with or without Kyle in a Mara, or a much bigger post presence. They're going to need that in Big Ten play. And they got to shore up a little bit more some three-point defense, just transition defense, and be more consistent offensively and not just let leads slip away like they've done against Gonzaga, against North Carolina or Arizona, Oregon, to name a few. But the thing is, those have been their 4 marquee games in December, and UCLA has won 3 of those 4 games. So you come in with a 1 loss against a non-tournament team on a neutral floor. Ugly. You look at the eye test, you look at the numbers, everything tells you a terrible loss for UCLA. Now, a decent New Mexico team that I believe is 11-3, while the Mountain West is not going to get the same respect it got last year or in recent years, I think at the moment. A neutral site loss to New Mexico is a little bit damaging for UCLA, who could be closer to a 3 or 2 seed if they had simply won that game or played much better. But Mick Cronin teams don't just go 13-0. They tend to go 10-1, so they can go yell at them, and they can get a lot better. Anytime UCLA plays near Vegas, in Vegas, anywhere within the vicinity of Vegas, it's been pretty bad. And that's what happened with UCLA in this instance against New Mexico. 20 turnovers. They look terrible. The Lobos, I think, a bad matchup in addition to that. With the size they can trot out there at once, it seemed like a bad mismatch for UCLA on paper and just what the rosters are constructed of. Now, could they play and beat them 9 out of 10 times? I don't know. But I like to think UCLA's gotten much better. Their other loss, North Carolina, a bubble team. 10 seed. And probably because it's North Carolina, they're on the 10 seed line as opposed to last 4 in. At this moment, for the rest of the Big Ten, UCLA is a marquee game. Not just, of course, for the name and the history and what the Bruins have done so far. It's going to be a huge resume builder. So that's why the Nebraska game is so huge for UCLA. That's a huge road win for the Bruins to get against a top 25 caliber team in Nebraska. I think they're closer to a top 25 team. Joe Lunardi has them as a last team in. All right. But Nebraska's a capable team, a tournament team, and a win over a team like UCLA means that's going to be a sold out, raucous atmosphere in Lincoln. And for UCLA to climb up the seed line, they're going to have to win those games. The games against Arizona away from home, that's going to help the metrics, help the analytics, help those quad 1-2 wins. But Arizona's not currently in the tournament. North Carolina, bubble team loss. You've got New Mexico, not even in the tournament. Oregon, who is slotted as a 2 seed in the South, that's a huge win for UCLA on the road. Huge win. Then you beat Gonzaga. You look at Gonzaga in the KenPom, actually ranked higher than Oregon. Oregon, who you look at, Joe Lunardi's had them as a top 8-5 team. Gonzaga, even with their 10-4 record, you look at the analytics, they're closer to a top 5 team in the country, along the likes of a Iowa State, Florida, who's unbeaten, and a Marquette, and even Tennessee in that realm. So you look at the analytics, UCLA's got a huge win, technically away from home, even though it's a neutral site NBA arena in their own backyard. Huge win for UCLA there. Now, beat Arizona, Oregon, Gonzaga, big wins. North Carolina is not going to be a terrible loss because you're on the road across the country and the community's not going to fault you. It's not a quad 4 loss. No. Now, the Bruins have to build that resume if they want to erase the memories of the one loss against New Mexico, of the loss to North Carolina. But the way I see it, I believe UCLA is a strong contender. But as I thought in the preseason, this is still a UCLA team that can take close to 7 losses. They could take 5 to 6, 7 losses. In this 20-game Big Ten schedule, is 15-5 going to be enough to win the Big Ten regular season? Quite well could be. Maybe it's 16-4, 17-3. In a lot of these games, it's one-offs. Other than for UCLA, Oregon, Washington, and USC, and the Bruins have to sweep Washington. On paper, they should sweep SC, although it's not a guarantee, even with what Eric Musselman's trying to grow out there this year. Not going to be his strongest team at SC. It'll still be a tough matchup. And Oregon's going to want revenge, and the Bruins just don't sweep Dana Altman. The Bruins are going to have to hold serve in those Big Ten games at home and the other 2. At the minimum, UCLA has to go 5-1 against their West Coast brethren. And that leaves with 14 other games, all one-offs against the other Big Ten schools. You got a couple of mulligans in there, but you can't start using them against the Nebraskas. You still got a tough Maryland road trip, a tough Rutgers back-to-back in those games. Sneaky tough opponents that are either looking for signature wins, sparks to their season, or are really good teams waiting to get national respect. UCLA, I think, should be a little closer to the top 10, but they're not forgotten about like the Nebraskas or the Marylands of the world. Those teams are going to come in, sell out their arenas, like all these Big Ten teams will, and bring it to UCLA. What can they stand to get better? Well, UCLA is going to have to show up consistently on defense and on offense for 40 minutes, which I'm not sure if UCLA's played a full 40 minutes of basketball. I think there's one game in that non-conference. I was like, yeah, this is UCLA showing its full potential. And then they show close to it. But UCLA has not played a full 40 minutes of basketball, and they might have to play close to that against Nebraska. Maybe we'll see one of the best games they've played in the first couple of weeks in Big Ten play. I don't know. But the disrespect, it's not there. UCLA hovering analytically around the same spot that the pollsters are. Joe Lunardi is statistically in the KenPom all around the same spot. And the bracketology has UCLA as a 4 seed in the West. Not a bad place to start. That would mean they play in Denver, play maybe a McNeese State, which would be a Will Wade type battle there. And the winner of a Memphis UC San Diego. UCLA fans remember, hey, we owe a loss, vacated loss, to Memphis because they had to vacate that run with Derrick Rose in that one. And that would maybe match them up with Duke right now in the West Regional. Not a bad start for UCLA. You can be a big seed, go across the country, or be a 4 seed and have to play your games in the West Regional against Duke, that would be entertaining. Wouldn't be a bad money-making business for the NCAA tournament or for UCLA or Duke. So where are they looking like? A top 4 seed. Now to stay there, the Bruins have to go minimum 15-5. I think they've done just enough in the non-con. They have to do a little bit more work in the Big Ten to put themselves in 1 seed, 2 seed contention. I would think closer to 16-4, 17-3, which is a tall order, but potentially doable with the Mick Cronin-led UCLA Bruins in this upcoming Big Ten stretch. I just lean towards they're more likely to have lost 6 to 7 games by the end of the regular season and go and run in the tournament rather than be 31-2. That's just not what this team is capable of, and they should sustain a couple of losses. As confident as I can pinpoint, I think they can beat that team. They should beat that team. They just struggle with interior defense, transition defense, and sometimes they can get a little stagnant offensively, as we've seen. And despite all that, they have some good analytics, and they've got some good wins to back it. And I'm excited for the Bruins the rest of this Big Ten season and in 2025 to get to March and hopefully a third week in the tournament getting into April. All right, that would be super fun. Next, let's talk about the UCLA women, who are also now unbeaten in their Big Ten early stages, right? They had their first 2-game week. If you look at the Sunday, look at the Wednesday, what did they do against Michigan? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you're paying for twice? Well, it's definitely happened to me. I've got a couple of things. What am I paying for that for? Well, Rocket Money's made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances because you can cancel those unwanted subscriptions, manage and monitor your spending into the early parts of this new year, and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Put everything all together in one place. And whether it's the subscriptions, the spending habits, all that, Rocket Money has over 5 million users. It's saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions and more for those users. And it's saved members close to $800 a year when using all the app's premium features. All right, go to cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your finance goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, cruising on. This segment here on Locked On UCLA, we're talking about the UCLA women's basketball team. And boy, oh boy, could you tell me that Cori Close is not a happy camper? She was frustrated. Maybe it's like the coach speak where sometimes a coach likes to make themselves mad. Like Mick Cronin can find a way to get mad. Cori Close has done a lot to kind of hype up everybody who covers the sport, the UCLA team as a whole, her staff, her players, everything. Even fellow rivals of sorts in the coaching tree or players against her in different programs. She's normally in a decent mood. At least that's what it seems. Today, no. We got a wake-up call was her message that if they're not ready, if they're not focused, they will get cooked in these upcoming Big Ten games, and maybe she's a little bit worried about how her team will play against Indiana. Early morning, early tip for a team like UCLA, a noon tip in Indiana, 9 a.m. Pacific. While the Bruins swept their early trip, they dominated Nebraska in late December, 91-54, and now that the calendar's turned to the new year, UCLA put up a lot of points, maybe not their best defensive effort, but they won 86-70, a back-and-forth affair against a Michigan team that's no slouch. Michigan is 10-4 now, 1-2. They were back and forth with USC for close to 3 quarters before USC eventually dominated them and pulled away. All right, so that's the same thing that UCLA did at home. Flirted with a little back and forth, 17-15 after the first quarter. UCLA outscored them by 9 in the second quarter, had a double-figure lead heading into the second half. Michigan clawed back, and the Bruins pulled away with a nearly 30-point fourth quarter. So they scored, and what were the things that were going right for UCLA? They assisted 35 of their made field goals with 29 assists. 15 turnovers, so close to a 2 assists to 1 turnover ratio. Although Cori Close was mentioning in the postgame, yeah, some of those involved offensive fouls. Some of those were late in the game. So overall, for a greater stretch of 40 minutes, she felt proud of her team with getting that turnover bug down. All right. And those are the things, right? Are they live ball turnovers for UCLA, or are we're learning how to screen, or somebody's having a turnover issue? Well, in this game, these turnovers went to Kiki Rice, who was nearly perfect last game. And then you had Dugalic, Arnasalo with 4 turnovers, and Janiyah Barker with turnovers. So main ball handlers there. Barker, a little turnover prone, but can handle the rock for sure. And then Kiki Rice, 10 assists to 3 turnovers in 30 minutes, 16 points and 8 shots. That's efficiency at its finest. In addition to Alina Arnasalo, okay, that's a freshman. From 8 turnovers down to 4, a little less minutes, 2 for 2, 6 points, 3 assists. Good game-by-game increase in her second big-time Big Ten game this early in the season for UCLA, who's 3-0 in Big Ten play. All right, so good to see the freshman Arnasalo, who, again, had 11 minutes against Nebraska, 8 turnovers, brought that back down to 4. Okay, well, she still had more turnovers than assists, brought something positive for a starting true freshman alongside Kiki Rice. And all this talent UCLA has, you're starting Arnasalo, great job for her to figure it out a little bit from game to game. And those are the little hidden growths that I think Cori Close is going to look at and maybe want more from her team, because she didn't believe they had the heart, the hustle. They got out-toughed is what she said. Well, the one thing I've been consistent on with this team is UCLA is really, really, really good. This team is stacked in talent, and not a single team in this country can match the talent the Bruins have. And that's what she said the team leaned on today. Not that she wants to, Coach Cori Close. She's frustrated with that. But I'm telling you this team is really good. Now they can lose. The Big Ten is a lot better than expected, top to bottom. But UCLA has just been coming from a powerhouse Pac-12 conference, all right? Like a few years ago, it was 2 Pac-12 teams in the national championship game, all right? Stanford, Arizona. You got teams who are making runs. They're fighting, nationally relevant. So the Big Ten, while it's more travel, probably more fans in an ever-growing women's basketball landscape and fans, UCLA is going to have a tough sled. They're going to have a tough schedule coming up. Other things that I like from this UCLA-Michigan game, they hit their free throws. Okay. You had 5 different players in double figures, and I think something that came up super important. I've tended to mention London Jones in her shooting stroke. In this game, 13 points. She went 4 of 6 from downtown. That is the type of player who, if she's coming off the bench, can be super dangerous. And when she's making her three-point shot, really good. Between Gardner, between Jones, of course, the matchup's going to call for something different. Maybe you need more ball-handling veterans out there, and a shooting opportunity that London Jones brings compared to an Arnasalo. Then you'll see her. Maybe need a bigger option. You put in Gardner in there, who didn't have the best shooting night, but I think it's a matchup-by-matchup basis that now Cori Close can play with all these teams in the Big Ten. Hey, I can go with a bigger shooter. I can go with someone I've trusted for more years, and I know she's pulled up in big moments like a top 5 USC team, or when she gets red hot, her team generally does not lose. And if London Jones shoots, UCLA does not lose. They do not. It just does not happen. In addition to the efficiency brought by Kiki Rice, we've seen Kiki Rice the double-double, 16 points, 10 assists, right? So a lot of these assists came from a true starting point guard. Lauren Betts, not her most efficient night, but Coach Close was talking about how proud she was. 13 points, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks, 2 steals, the physicality in the paint where she just dominates in addition to those 5 assists. So that led to more points, at least 10 with those 5 assists. Double-double machine there. Gabby Hawkes, 12 points on 6 of 7 shooting. Baby Hawkes, Gabs right there. That's efficiency as well. Dugalic, 24 minutes in the starting lineup, 12 points, 6 boards. Starting with that Long Beach game where she had one of her career best outings, and how coach has talked about her, Angela Dugalich's growth. That's earned her time in the starting lineup. I could look and say, hey, maybe there's more talented options in there. You'd maybe sneak in a Gardner in there. Maybe you sneak someone else in there. No, they're going with Dugalich. And with the work she's put in, the addition to the shot, different scoring option, another physical person down in the post to get rebounds, UCLA can bring someone off the bench for her to counteract, right? Maybe some athleticism with a different shooting angle, more rebounding prowess, whatever it might be. That's just the danger this UCLA team is to anybody they play. Now, as dicey as it was in some moments against Michigan, the Bruins pulled away. USC did the same thing, all right? They did the same thing. And the Bruins just absolutely thrashed Nebraska in the second half and pulled away from Michigan. Mind you, Michigan was playing South Carolina toe-to-toe in the fourth quarter. They lost to what was then a top 10 Oklahoma team within like 10 points. And their only other two losses have come against UCLA SC on the road, where they fought for 2.5, 3 quarters against both the Trojans and the Bruins. So it's not like they're playing, all right, this is some fake 10-14. No, Michigan can ball. And if UCLA had to go to Ann Arbor and they brought a good crowd, some energy, UCLA was maybe a little sluggish after some travel, could have been an upset. Just not today. And this team is too good. I'd like to believe UCLA has a chance to go for an undefeated season, but this schedule is really tough. The SC game is going to be a sellout and extremely emotional, just like it will be at Pauley Pavilion. And then you got to do it maybe for a third time or a second time against all these Big Ten teams in the stacked Big Ten tournament scenario where some of these teams are playing their way in or for better seeding. So I do think UCLA, one, clear number one. They will have an off night or two that will take them out of the number one spot. Although my thought is, if you're a pollster, if you're ranking these teams, and you saw UCLA, who played number 2 South Carolina, kick their butt, and South Carolina has been destroying everybody else since, even if UCLA loses, I'd still think they're number 1 in the country. Now, it depends how they lose, who they lose to, and what happens, and where, and why, and how, but this team is really good. As evidenced by a 3-0 start. Maybe Coach Close is making something out of nothing. I'm frustrated. Mick Cronin can do the same thing. We were this. That's the coach's job, to nitpick and get better. Because if you're satisfied in January 1st of all days, you're not going to get better. Okay. But still a good win. They won by 16 at home. And the Big Ten is good. Michigan, solid team. Now UCLA's got to go earn that number 1 overall seed and continue to dominate Big Ten play. No slip-ups. Not like it's as tough as it was in the Pac-12. It's really tough, but you can't slip up and hurt your seeding, because that's what we saw last year in the Pac-12. 2 teams battling for the top. 3 teams. I thought UCLA was 1 seed worthy. All right? 1 seed worthy. But it was so stacked that in the end, SC was able to earn that 1 seed by winning the Pac-12 tournament, by beating UCLA that 2nd out of 3 times, and then knocking off Stanford, win the Pac-12 tournament title. Different this year, because when I think UCLA is better than SC, we'll find out in the court twice, 3 times. Dare I say a crazy 4-year matchup, 4 matchups in 1 season? It's possible with the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. Juju versus Kiki, Lauren Betts, you get the gist. But there's still some top-tier competition. UConn's lurking with Paige Beckers. South Carolina wants another crack at UCLA with an angry Don Staley saying, hey, let's go get them. But this UCLA team, really excited to see how they play the rest of this year in 2025. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. We're going to talk more UCLA football, men's basketball, highlight more matchups here in UCLA. So like, comment, subscribe, download the episodes, and tell a friend. Comment your thoughts. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA, fight. This has been Locked on UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins, and Happy New Year.